Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casmon, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying this show and getting some great value for your investing goals, let us hear about it. Give me some honest feedback with a rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. It helps us, but it also helps other listeners find this show for their own investing goals. We got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Peter Murphy-Lewis. Stop wasting time trying to figure out Google's new algorithm for SEO. Instead, figure out what you should be doing in 2025 to help you grow your own marketing and drive more traffic to your business. Today, we sat down with Peter Murphy-Lewis, also known as Strategic Pete. Now, he works as a fractional CMO across multiple industries, including AI, zoos, as well as SaaS and fintech. Now, listen, Pete has a ton of experience and a ton of knowledge working across different industries, and he shares what every investor, every CMO, every marketer, every entrepreneur should be utilizing in 2025 to see better success and better growth. Grow your business today by checking out this episode of Multifamily Insights. Let's welcome to the show, Peter Murphy-Lewis.
Happy to be here, man.
Peter, great to have you on. Great to talk to you today. And I keep calling you Peter. I'm going to call you Pete going forward here. But give us a little more context, right? I went over your bio. You've done a lot of work in different industries. How do we get from, Peter Murphy-Lewis to Strategic Pete?
The abbreviated version is I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. The longer version is I thought I wanted to be a diplomat in college, so I went to South America, studied my master's, became a full-time professor. I realized I wasn't going to go anywhere. So I started my own company, which I just exited 2 months ago. Started that when I was 27 years old, and that blew up. That's where I kind of got my marketing chops. I put my own money behind my theory and thoughts, and got in New York Times twice. Got hired by Beyonce, Paul McCartney, and Aerosmith, and then grew into 4 cities and hit 7 figures rather quickly. That kind of moved into television. I got a television gig, and now I do TV for the last 10 years. I have 2 different TV shows, 4 different seasons and documentaries. And all of that kind of has I would say what the common theme here, John, is that I've been a storyteller. I've always been a talker. And as I've gotten older, my talking starts to help other people. And so I try to help people how to tell their story so they can make money off their marketing.
Pete, I love it, man. What an interesting background. You talked about, going abroad for school, becoming a professor, becoming an entrepreneur. You just sold that. Congratulations on that. And working with some huge names, man. Beyonce, Paul McCartney, Aerosmith, having 2 TV shows, lots of great value, man. Talk to us a little bit more about that, right? So when you talk about some of these different experiences that you've had, could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on some of the businesses or kind of the focus on some of those industries?
Yeah. Today, and you mentioned this in my bio, I work as a fractional chief marketing officer. My 10 most recent clients, there's been fintech, 2 AI, 2 healthcare, 2 private equity, a couple zoos, and then some newly chartered banks. So I'm a little bit all over the place. And I think my lesson from this, there's a guy on LinkedIn that I absolutely love who runs a company called Winter, and he does surveys for people to figure out where their ICP is. His name's Pete. P-E-E-P. And he did a survey yesterday. And he said, where would you want to get tips and classes and webinars? Who's the person you trust the most? And he asked, a successful CEO, somebody who's a CMO, a founder, somebody who's exited, and then he put in fractional CMO. And right now, today, the poll that is winning is fractional CMO, and the people wrote down the answers, and they said it's because it's a person who works across different industries. I used to think about 3 years ago, my biggest weakness is that I didn't niche down, and it's mostly because I enjoy working across different problems. And today, that kind of survey confirmed this is an advantage because it allows you to pull in something from banking that might work for a zoo, something that works for a zoo that might work for AI.
It's crazy because on the surface, you wouldn't think an AI company and a zoo would have very much overlap. But to your point, it's interesting to see you can find solutions from one industry and apply it to a different industry. It's really cool to see and hear you talk about that. Let's jump into that a little bit more, right? So today you work as a fractional CMO working across various industries. I know you work with some smaller companies, probably some larger companies, some solopreneurs, some larger organizations. At a high level, what are some of the key marketing challenges that all companies are facing today?
There's a long list. I'll start with kind of what comes to mind. Right now, AI is the big disruptor, right? Like I'm on the board of a bank and we just need to be thinking about efficiency of our expense. We need to think about efficiency of personnel. We need to think about what is the tech setup that we need to be embracing before our competitors do, but make sure that we're keeping the same personal touch. And you see that the AI, you see that across everything. But in banking, it's just an example. Banking's sometimes 10 years behind when it comes to tech and marketing. So that's what I'm thinking of. The other thing, and I think as a marketer yourself, you're gonna be like shake your head, is attribution, right? The people that you and I are going to introduce each other to on this podcast does not have tracking, right? I'm going to introduce you to three of my friends who are going to help you. You're going to introduce me to three of your friends. And that doesn't show up in HubSpot. It doesn't show up in your ad attribution. It doesn't show up in SEO. It doesn't show up in Google. It doesn't show up that you and I met through Slack or on a Discord. Attribution is the other thing. And I feel like non-marketing CEOs still don't get it. So right now, if you feel confused about attribution, you're actually ahead of everyone else. It's okay right now to be confused and know that there's this deep social or dark social and you don't understand how things are happening, how we're exchanging information. Those are the two that are just really, really top of mind. And then from there, there's tactics. There's LinkedIn related to the latter one around AI. There's around getting your tech stack in order, getting a good COO. Where do you digest that information so that you're ahead of the times?
Yeah, great stuff there. You talked primarily about AI and then attribution, just understanding where leads and sales are coming from so you can understand what's working, what's not working. And I mean, it's crazy because that's always been a challenge. I remember that old joke in marketing is 50% of my marketing budget is wasted. I just don't know which 50%. So that's one of the things that, every marketer is always trying to gauge, success. And I remember, man, when I used to work at GM in marketing and um, I would always I was always so frustrated because when you're talking about selling a car, you can't attribute car sales to one thing, a TV spot, a radio ad, an event. But we would try to do it with events. And it frustrated me because like no one ever went to this event, saw our vehicle on display, filled out whatever little survey or postcard or whatever thing we had. And we would track, did they buy a car in 6 months? And I'm like, this is a terrible way of gauging whether or not these events are successful. But it was the best we could come up with, right? So it was a metric we had. So it's always one of those things that's kind of frustrating, and hopefully it gets a little bit easier to identify what's working and what's not working. But certainly it's a challenge for most operators, most CEOs, and most business professionals. Are you seeing advancements in that space? I mean, is it a little bit better than maybe where it was maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago?
No, I actually think that it's worse, and I kind of like it because I think that it allows those companies, entrepreneurs who have a strong brand, a great service, and a great product. They are able to catch up to the people who had money to spend on big budgets and big marketing. So, big marketing budgets were able to determine, hey, I'm going to throw, $40,000 this week at Meta and then make a difference. And these smaller entrepreneurs who didn't have that budget but have a strong brand, they couldn't play in that field. They didn't have the marketers set up the attribution back then. They didn't have the email list to do it, but they plugged away slowly, organically, and built this brand. And now we're in this world right now of we're fighting for everybody's attention across 15 different channels. TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn and Slack and in conventions now and so forth. The brand is actually has a better advantage. The brand can't think about the attribution. They don't have the staff to do it. They don't have the tech to do it. But if they just keep plugging away, thinking about how am I helping somebody, that word of mouth will travel through those 15 channels. I like it. My clients don't always like it because they don't know what's doing right. But I mean, I specifically, when I'm doing outbound, John, I only look for people who have a great product or great service, and they're missing a way to amplify that.
Pete, I love what you said. I want to give a little context because one of the things I find non-marketers struggle with is understanding that difference between marketing and brand. And when you're talking about a strong brand versus big marketing budget, what you're really getting at is, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? Yeah, that word of mouth, like that brand is not something you can fix or change with an advertising budget. Certainly it helps, but a brand is the perception and the reputation your company, your firm, your service offers, right? That's what a brand is. And in the past, certainly that was heavily shift or shaped by the marketing spend. You go out there and put a bunch of ads on TV or radio, and a company you never heard of has no chance of breaking through. But today, because of the platforms you mentioned, right, TikTok and LinkedIn, and being able to show up locally, there's a big push on local initiatives, right? You can stand out and compete with some of the big boys who maybe have a advertising budget 10, 15, 100 times bigger than yours, if you can build that groundswell support. So it's really important to focus on the brand, actually delivering on that promise and customer service, as opposed to just getting in front of a bunch of people as much as possible. I know for our listeners, many of them are solopreneurs, multifamily investors trying to kind of build up their smaller portfolio or even a larger portfolio, but they don't have the big marketing budget. Can you talk a little bit more about brand building for these solo entrepreneurs?
Yeah, when I'm talking to a solo entrepreneur, or maybe even like a nonprofit that has a board but doesn't have a full-time employee, I always try to figure out where can we do more with less, and by starting by doing less. Yesterday, I went to a board meeting of a nonprofit for an organization that I respect a lot, for kids that are dyslexic in my hometown. I was dyslexic. My son's dyslexic, so I'm trying to help them out with marketing. And I just said, like, we don't need to be on 5 channels. Who are we trying to get attention to? We're trying to accomplish kind of 3 things. We need to find donors. They're on LinkedIn, right? It's a 45 to 65-year-old person who is in corporate America, has some extra income, and wants to make a difference because they don't have time during the day, and they're going to do it with their. Secondly, we need to do it with teachers. We need to give scholarships to teachers who can give more tutoring to kids with dyslexics. And then maybe dyslexic kids, probably a lot less. So I would focus, on that instance. For donors, we need to be on LinkedIn. And then for teachers, we need to be on Meta and Facebook, and we need to be in private groups. We don't need to even be paying for ads. Every single person who's a teacher who just needs to be equipped to be a dyslexic instructor is on some type of Facebook. They're in some local community. So just slow down. We don't need to be on YouTube. We probably don't even need to worry about an email newsletter yet. We definitely don't need to be doing ads. They don't need to be on podcasts, because if they want to make an impact in Wichita, like, you're not going to be able to find one podcast that everybody in Wichita, Kansas listens to. So just slow down and think about it. Right now, it's a really simple question. Is your ICP, is your ideal customer profile persona on LinkedIn? That means if you can write down 5 names of people who you want to talk to and you want to have a relationship with, and you want to be able to show them what value you can provide to them in their life, search for them on LinkedIn. If they're on LinkedIn, they have a profile picture. If they have more than 300, 500 connections, then I would start with your ABCs. Start on LinkedIn. Soon as you connect with them, LinkedIn will send them updates every single day in their algorithm, reminding them, hey, somebody reached out to you. You don't have to spam them by email. You don't have to drop voicemails. LinkedIn's going to do all the spamming for you. So it's like a multiplier.
Yeah, I love that, right? You talked about, first of all, when you're a solopreneur, you have a smaller budget. Step back and understand, who are you really trying to reach, and look to do less, right? You don't need to be on every single platform.
Mm-hmm.
Where is you call it an ICP, right? Your ideal customer
Mm-hmm.
profile. So where's that ICP? If LinkedIn is it, great. make sure you're getting there, you're getting active, you're getting in front of them, you're connecting with those individuals, and it makes sense. And then for some, it might be Facebook, right? It might be getting into some of these different groups. And then there might be other platforms as well. But identifying who you're trying to talk to and where they're actually playing, like what kind of resources are they consuming, that's going to allow you to actually have a deeper engagement. We talked a little about LinkedIn right there, and I know you're pretty big on LinkedIn. In the past, people were really, really big on SEO. A lot has changed with the SEO, but I know LinkedIn tends to do pretty well. Can you just elaborate a little bit more about kind of your perspective?
Yes. So 2 years ago, I was doubling down, tripling down on SEO. I was helping rebrand an enterprise SaaS company in the healthcare space to be stop the churn, be rebranded, and then exit. And we went from a rebrand, means zero visitors on the website, to 45,000 visitors a year later, all through SEO and a little bit of podcast. Today, that same playbook would not even get me 5,000 visitors per month. SEO has changed. The algorithm has changed. There's uncertainty. People don't even really know. The smartest people in the room, in my opinion, when they're honest, they're going to say, I'm doing my best. I'm testing these things. And none of them know it's going to work. In that time, it doesn't mean that I'm quit writing. I have a team of 15 people. I'm writing on my blogs. I'm writing on blogs for my clients. But it's not even 5% of my marketing energy. Right now, I've decided I was ahead of the game. When I started to realize, I listened to indicators, I listened to people talking, I realized things were going to be disrupted. I tried to figure out what was the next place where I could spend, 30 to 50% of my energy and have the biggest impact for my clients and for myself. And that's LinkedIn, right? Like as a fractional CMO, my retainers start from $5,000 going up to $30,000, depending on how much engagement me and my team are doing. They're on LinkedIn, right? You're in the investment space. I'm guessing most of them are in LinkedIn. So think about that. Before, SEO was really important for me. YouTube, also important for me. Do I know how to perfect YouTube? No. So it's exploratory right now. I do know how to perfect LinkedIn. So that's where I spend 2 hours of my daily schedule connecting, delivering value, posting every single day. And the good thing about it with AI, you can do LinkedIn in 30 minutes a day or 45 minutes a day, and you can do a B plus effort, and you're going to have results, especially because I still think 90% of America is behind on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think it's so important to understand a couple things there. One, I mean, you talked about, hey, find out where your person is. For many people, LinkedIn is it. You're looking at other professionals being a fractional CMO. We're raising capital from investors, working with other investors in our coaching business. So LinkedIn certainly makes sense. And it probably makes sense for anybody listening to this podcast, right? Like LinkedIn is a great resource. The other thing that jumps out, I don't know, I'm sure you have, but if you Google your own name, if you have a LinkedIn profile, it's likely going to come up as the first, second, maybe third option, but it's high up there. So when people are looking for you or they're getting to know you, LinkedIn has some great SEO itself, right? So that's a tool that I think is certainly underutilized and one that people certainly need to jump into more in a way that they can kind of engage and have a little more control, right? Because trying to drive people to your website, it's always tricky, right? You're competing with everyone else that's in the space, but you don't know when they're looking for it versus being on one of these platforms where they already have the eyeballs. Now it's just a matter of getting their attention versus driving them to your website. So certainly a little bit of a shift. You said a word there that you mentioned a couple times. You talked about disruptor, and I don't think the average person thinks about disruption in their business maybe as much as they should. You talked about it from an AI standpoint earlier. You then talked about it from an SEO standpoint. How do we anticipate or look for this disruption? I'm thinking about the book "Who Moved My Cheese," right? And it's so many people, you do what you do, right? You come in, you work hard, you're on the hamster wheel, you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, great, but now you're doing whatever that thing is that you do. And the natural inclination is just to do more of it, right? If you're not getting the same results, you got to do more of it. We got to post more. We got to spend more time on it, right? We got to figure out what's going on versus recognizing that maybe something has actually shifted. Can you just talk to us about kind of your viewpoint of disruption and how do we get better at recognizing when that's actually taking place?
Yeah, I can speak from my position and where I am and kind of how I digest the information. So if I were a solopreneur, I would have a very simple scorecard, right? That scorecard is what are some leading and what are some trailing metrics. For that might be how many people have hit my website. It might be this week. How many people have sent me an email? How many people opened my email? How many people have accepted my connections on LinkedIn? What are my impressions this week on LinkedIn? Just some really simple. Just keep not don't create any metrics where you need to hire a marketer. Keep it simple, simple, simple. And then I also think about it back to basics, right? Like I always say, when I have a big client right now who gives up on almost every marketing strategy after 6 to 8 weeks. And they said, "How do you know what to focus on?" I said, "Well, if your kid wants to win the mile, you have to take them to track for 3 months in a row before they win the mile, right? So like at some point, you just got to listen to the people around you, right? If I want to sleep well, I don't need an expert to tell me that I should keep my cell phone in another room and I should drink enough water every single day and I shouldn't drink alcohol after 8 o'clock at night, right? Like there's some things that are just common sense. You got to quit listening to the noise. Okay, so there's set up your scorecard. There's go to track practice every day. And then the third one is listen to smarter people around you who give away free advice and you know that they're not trying to make money off you. I have, the five people around me that I want to be like from a human point of view, that are smarter than me, that are more involved. But I also do the same thing from a business point of view, right? Like I've only spent 30 minutes talking to you, John, but before we hit record, I'm like, man, if I lived in Cincinnati, I'm taking John out to lunch once a month, right? So find your John in your life who's not trying to sell you anything. John's not trying to sell me anything. I know that I can trust him. And if he's got something on a trade show or on a podcast or on LinkedIn or YouTube, then I would dedicate 25% of my energy to something exploratory, which means that if I turn off that faucet at 6 weeks or 8 weeks, like my client, who cares? I'm still going to track and I'm paying attention to some simple metrics with that new exploratory area as well. For me right now, that's public speaking, right? So it took me about 6 months to get lined up for public speaking. I got 7 keynote public speaking gigs and I'm putting tons of chips this year into getting leads from public speaking. But if it doesn't work, I can turn that faucet off. It's exploratory. My track, I'm going to LinkedIn. The reason I know that LinkedIn works, I'm going to track every single day from LinkedIn, is because I have some tools that identify every single person who comes to my website. I connect with them on LinkedIn. Then I'm using LinkedIn as my secondary website, and then using LinkedIn algorithm to remind that person who I am and how I can help them. And it's simple. Like I don't really have more than 5 things going on at any given time, and I have a big team.
I love it, man. You talked about a couple things. First and foremost, just recognizing the basics, like don't overthink everything. Understand the basics, but also understand what's working in your business. What are those key metrics? Track them, pay attention to them. And the good thing is, even if you haven't been tracking them, a lot of times you can retroactively pull down your data and take a look, whether it be for your website traffic, any of your marketing initiatives, social media. If you have a professional account, you can usually download that and go back and say, oh, okay, what happened here? How are we getting traction here? And you can start to see trends. And actually studying your data is so important. But I don't think a lot of people actually take the time to do it because they're just putting out fires all the time. But actually take a moment, take a look at what you've done, what worked, what could be better, and then what are the trends and what is that telling you? So really, really good intel there. I love that recommendation or that visual. If you want to be better at track, you got to go run track, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
that simple. You got to, go to sleep at night. You got to drink plenty of water. Some of these things we overcomplicate. They're not as hard as they need to be, but the consistency, that's the hard part, right? That's the key that you've got to really lock in on, is being able to do this consistently. I want to go back for a solo entrepreneur again, right? So from a budget standpoint, most people are scraping by, trying to get this business off the ground or just trying to get a little bit of traction. And they don't have the money to hire someone who's great like you, right? To bring on that fractional CMO. Or maybe they just don't think they have the ability to go hire someone like you. First of all, I want you to explain kind of how a fractional CMO works and what kind of not necessarily compensation, but just like give a little bit more framework of, hey, is this actually something that could be a plausibility, or is it going to be out of the realm of possibilities? And then second, can you just talk about how they can be more resourceful with maybe the funds they do have so that they can get the leverage necessary to get some traction in the business?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I would mention um, in response to that question. Well, I would, I think I would start off with fractional. So, fractional CMO, in my opinion, is for a company probably north of $3 to $4 million annual revenue, and you're getting a CMO. You get 100% of their expertise for about 20 to 30% of the cost. So you're getting all the knowledge, so you don't waste money on great execution on a bad strategy, right? You're paying for knowledge and experience so that you don't waste money on things that you shouldn't be doing. Um, if you're not at that stage, there's way more affordable versions to hiring somebody who knows and can give you advice. There's a lot of platforms out there that are very inexpensive. And one of my favorites is Growth Mentor, growthmentor.com. I don't make a dollar off them. It is a platform that probably has 2,000 different fractional executives on there. I'm a paying member. I've been paying for that community since it started in probably December of 2021, where I booked calls, 2 to 5 calls per week with people way smarter than me in areas that I need help with. And I don't know what it costs today. Maybe it's $100 a month, but it's a lot cheaper than my retainer. And I'm on there for free. So for $100 a month, you can book unlimited calls with me, and you don't have to pay me as a fractional CMO, and I don't make any money off of it. I do it because I love it. I talk to smart people, like you, who, if you and I had 2 hours, there's 20 things you'd help me out with, and there's 20 things I could help you out with. Well, why don't we just barter it? For me, it's win-win. And then the last item is interns. I have built every single one of my businesses, including the business I just exited, off of interns. Now, there's the first thing that come to mind. My guess is going to be like, oh, you're doing it because they're free. Well, yes, I would say plus 9 other reasons. And they're not actually free. I pay so that there's a stipend that feels symbolic, but I'm teaching them things that they wouldn't get in school. In school, they're going to pay $20,000 to $60,000 and walk away with debt. There's a lot of things that I can teach them that they're not going to learn in school. So it's a win-win relationship. My team of 15 people, 13 of them come from interns. My travel company, when we got up to 50 people, about 25 of them were interns at a given point. So the interns do 6 months with me, and they're better at me than certain things. I'm better than them at other things. And we exchange that. And that's a great place for an entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, to get started. As long as you have something you can offer them, knowledge, your experience, mentorship, emotional intelligence, management skills, whatever it is you're great at. Maybe it's managing money, and there's a 22-year-old who's a marketer who wants to learn how to invest. There's a win-win right there, and that's a great way to start. I have a book that if anyone reaches out to me, I'll give it to you for free. It's called Interns to A Players. It's a blueprint for remote CEOs, and it is a systematic approach. Every single chapter has something you can download. Every single chapter tells you how to approach this, and you could just take this playbook. And I think that's the starting way. So don't look for a fractional CMO like me. Sign up for a platform like Growth Mentor for less than $100, and then get an intern and just get plugging away.
Pete, some phenomenal insights right there. You summarized it right there at the end, so I love it, right? But you don't have to get that big, expensive, scary C-suite executive on your team to start. Obviously, if your business is humming, you're making $3-4 million in revenue, you probably want to make that investment. But beyond that, you can go to Growth Mentor. You can go and check out this free resource you talked about, right? So intern to A players sounds like a great resource for our listeners. And again, I think the biggest point here is tap into other folks. There's only so much you can learn and so much you can know and so much you can do. The more you can leverage the expertise of other people, the easier it's going to be for you to scale. Pete, for folks that want to learn more about you and connect, what's the best way for them to reach out?
LinkedIn, big surprise, right? I am the only Peter Murphy Lewis on LinkedIn. So go over there, connect with me coldly. Tell me that you love John's podcast that you heard about there. Tell me what you liked about our conversation. And you can visit my website, strategicpete.com, and watch how my playbook works. I'll identify who you are, and then you'll see that. Then you'll avoid that awkward silence where you reach out to me and connect with me and don't want to say anything. Well, I'll connect with you, and then I'll start the conversation.
I love it. Strategicpete.com, and make sure you check them out on LinkedIn, make that connection. Pete, we're going to transition and go to our round of insights. Are you ready?
Yeah.
They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
I'm going to go big. I don't think I've ever shared this, John. When I was 21 years old, I was in my 3rd year of college. I was a junior in college in Boston. And the most prestigious thing in my college was to do your senior year at Oxford as an exchange student. And only about 5 or 6 students got into it. I knew that I was going to get into it. I was the best person in my class. I had straight A's. I was a TA. I'd lived abroad already in college, valedictorian of high school. I was going to get it. Editor of my college newspaper. John, they rejected me for being too arrogant. And I had teachers stand up for me and go appeal to Oxford and say, Peter should get in. He may have come off wrong. He's confident. Don't confuse his confidence for arrogance. And they rejected me. And I graduated early. I got that letter and I said, I'm going to graduate. I graduated in 3 years. And I went on to remember for the rest of my life that there will my high energy will be misinterpreted for arrogance or extreme or arrogance or lacking humility and so forth. I need to be careful with that energy, but at the same time, I can't hold back. Like my confidence got me where I am. And the roundabout story about this, John, is about 7 or 8 years ago. I was living in South America. And I was doing a bunch of keynotes for executive MBA programs around that came around the world that went down to South America. Who do you think reached out to me and asked me if I'd do a keynote for their executive MBA program? Oxford.
I love it.
Yeah. And I got to share that story with them. They gave me a standing ovation. So it was a slap in the face and it really hurt my ego. I was embarrassed. I should have played my cards differently, but I was 21 years old and I was just excited. And I lost it. It's my fault. It's not their fault. I missed out. They didn't miss out. But it taught me about humility.
You know what? I appreciate you sharing that. And obviously, you know, those moments are always tough. But I'm curious, when they reached out to you, man, what was that initial response? Did you give a little? I
think I screamed. I think I printed the email. And I think I went and told, at that time, my wife, my girlfriend, now my wife, I think I told my business partner, and I just couldn't believe it. And the company that hired me, between the agency, the broker that hired me, I immediately told them the story and they said, that's fantastic.
I love it. I love it, man. Awesome. Great to hear that. I appreciate you sharing it. Next question here. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
Aftergrowth mentor, I would say, if you're going to embrace LinkedIn, use a tool called breakcold.com, inexpensive CRM for you to keep all of the people that you want to be talking to in a CRM, but only on LinkedIn. And what's great about it is it pulls in, you can do email from there as well, but it's a LinkedIn tool. My other resource would probably be 3 different communities. If you're an entrepreneur and you kind of like this conversation, I have three communities I absolutely love. copyclub.ai. It's a membership where I pay to belong to a community of people that are really, really deep in AI. It's very inexpensive, might be $100 a month or so. And these are two business partners who just digest. I feel like they eat and drink and breathe and sleep AI 18 hours a day. And I get to go to live sessions with them, office hours, where they digest that. And in an hour, they tell me what I should be doing for AI, and I can bring all my problems to it. The second one is Rhodium. Rhodium is a high net worth group of digital nomads that plan to exit their company in the next 10 to 20 years. And every single person in that community is smarter than me. I feel like I am a high school intern when I go there, but they're humble and they let me ask stupid questions, and they're deep human beings. And then my last community is Dynamite Circle. It's a cool community of just brilliant people who are always sharing tips. And if you're not good at marketing, go in there and ask a question. Somebody's going to help you for free. If you're not good at sales, ask a sales question. Somebody's going to help you. I don't make $1 off any of those. I pay for every single one of those communities.
I love it, man. 3 great ones there. We'll make sure to link to those: copyclub.ai, Rhodium, and Dynamite Circle. Great tips there. All right, give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Oh, bam! I love this question, John. It is The 5 Languages of Love. That book has changed my life. It's made me a better husband, a better dad, a better son, a better brother. I've done breakout sessions and keynotes on it. About 5 years ago, I bought, I think, 15 versions of the book. I was living in South America. About 15 versions of the book in the US in English for all of my friends that were traveling to South America, and I just start passing it away. It's a book that's about 200 pages. I can just put it in somebody's backpack and I say, hey, you're going to be on a bus or an airplane tomorrow. Read this. You're going to love it. It's going to blow up your world, and everything around your life is going to get better.
I love it, man. It's a great book. My wife and I were reading it together via the Audible. And the only thing that sucks about reading a book with someone is like it's worse than watching a TV show with someone, because like you got to wait to be in an environment you can actually listen to it together. But it's an absolutely phenomenal read, so I appreciate you sharing that. Great book, and allows you
Save
to
my
really
marriage.
have great conversations, right, to understand each other a little bit better, and lots of great parables and stories throughout that book for sure. So great, appreciate you sharing that.
I use it with my interns. So I try to determine every single one of my interns the way that they want to be appreciated. Yep. And when I can figure out how they feel appreciated, now I can show them that recognition, and it gets buy-in, and both of us are able to understand each other and work harder together.
Yeah, it's great because obviously most of us go directly to relationships, but it's beyond just dating and marriage. It's about people. And my wife and I were literally just talking about this last night, because she's going to a friend's birthday tomorrow, and we were talking about that friend. I'm like, well, I don't know her, but I know her husband. Her husband's love language is absolutely gift giving. This man is amazing. Every time he sees me, every time he travels, he brings a gift. I was just in Japan. I'm like, man, this is incredible. Like, this guy always has a gift. So I'm like, I know that's his love language. I don't know about hers, but anyway, just it's a great read. Check it out for sure. It's The 5 Love Languages. It's a really, really good book. Give me your number one insight. And I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, because we've talked a little bit about, the fractional CMO role. We've talked a little about the changes in marketing, but give me your number one insight for marketing in today's environment.
Wow, what an insight. I got it. There's a little bit of overlap between these two, so I'll share both, so that if one of them resonates more with the other. It is that we are in a human world, as tribes, as tribal men and women. We are dying to be understood by others and be connected with others. And that need is more present than ever with cell phone addiction, with the things that we use to, mask our fears and our pain, our weight, and our streaming, and the way that we flip around YouTube. And if you could go back to that principle from a marketing point of view, it is going to make you more effective at everything that you do. The way that I translate that to my son and to any marketer or anyone who works on my team is, how can you be the most helpful person in the room? I always tell my 8-year-old, I said, you're dyslexic like me. You might not be the smartest person in the room. You can work harder than everyone else. If you don't want to worry about AI, if you don't want to worry about the economy or Trump or Biden or whatever's going on, if you're the most helpful person every single time you're in the room, you're always going to have a job. You're always going to have friends. Your wife's always going to love you. Your parents are going to want to be around you. And start with that. And those two are intimately related, but they're just the basics of marketing.
Pete, I love that, man. Just being the most helpful person in the room is really, really straightforward and somewhat simple, but it's a great reminder of what it takes, and goes back to building a brand, right? Whether it be a personal brand or a business brand. That's the difference between having a brand and just spending money on advertising and a big budget. So appreciate you sharing that. Pete, let's go in a different direction, right? You're in Wichita, Kansas. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
I am going to surprise you with this one. So I live, John, in the middle of a zoo. I live right now in a zoo. There's zebras behind me, and there are cheetahs in front of me. And our zoo, which has been a premium wildlife resort for the last 10 or 12 years, this year is going a step higher and more premium. And they increased the entrance, and you can swim with otters here, you can swim with penguins here, you can feed rhinos, hippos, and giraffes. And they just went all inclusive, and they just took their 3-star food up to 5-star food. And they have fresh salads, bagels every single day. You can come here for sunrise and sundown and be with these animals and have the most premium food. Right now, the best food, in my opinion, Wichita, Kansas, is Tanganyika Wildlife Park. And it's crazy with animals right in the middle of the U.S.
There was a lot of options when you started off and said I wasn't going to believe this. And you're right. There's no way in the world that I believe that you live in a zoo. Like, I feel like I can't just overlook that, right? Like, can you please? I know you said you work with a couple of zoos. You didn't say you lived in a zoo. So how did that come to be?
The story is in 2019, November 2019, my 3-year-old at the time and I came to the US for a month trip. I wanted to visit all of my friends and family in the United States that I hadn't seen in about 12 or 13 years. They'd never met my son. I hadn't lived in the US in quite some time, and I wanted them to see my upbringing. And one of the places we visited was Wichita, Kansas. I'm not from here. We visited Wichita, Kansas. We stayed with a friend that I went to grade school with, and she was married to the owner of this zoo. He knew that I was a marketer. And a month later, he called me and he said, "Hey, would you help build up my zoo? We have an amazing product, amazing service. Will you help us do marketing?" I said, "I don't live in the United States. I don't have a house. I don't have a car." He said, "I'll get you a house, but it's inside the zoo." I called my wife. A week later, she flew to the United States. We moved into the zoo, and we've been here since February 1st, 2020. It's amazing.
It's incredible, man. I don't know why.
You gonna come visit?
I would love to. Got to bring the boys though. They would check that out and love it too. I'm mad at myself for waiting to the end of the interview to pull this out of you. I feel like I should have asked better pre-interview questions, because that I would have went completely off rails and just asked you a bunch of zoo questions. But nonetheless, Pete, we're up on time, man. I just want to say I appreciate your time today, and a couple of really big takeaways and insights for myself and for our listeners. One is just really stepping back. I think a lot of times when we think about marketing in the marketing departments, we go straight into advertising and messaging and things like that. When the reality is, it comes around to your brand, and your brand is really your values. What do you believe in? What do you communicate? And how do you back that up on a day-to-day basis? That's really what's going to allow you to stand out in 2025 and beyond, is really understanding what you stand for. You talked about it a little bit, but be helpful. Be the most helpful person in the room. That's going to allow you to connect with people. That's going to allow you to build relationships. And maybe that individual is not the right fit, but they're going to be more willing to recommend you to someone who is the right fit. So taking that approach certainly serves you well. We talked about that transition from SEO to LinkedIn and recognizing where people are going and how to identify who that ICP is, right? That ideal customer profile, and making sure that you're spending your time on the right platforms, talking to the right people and solving the right problems. And then you also gave some great resources. We're going to link to a lot of them in our show notes, but you talked about for those folks who are really looking to get some help, whether it be from a fractional CMO like yourself or from someone else, they can go to Growth Mentor. They can get the resource you mentioned, Interns to A+.